Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Film Fights, where today we have a set of horror movies to discuss. Well, a movie and a two-part miniseries, It and It. Instead of doing a quick video, basically giving my thoughts on the new financial and critical hit like I've done previously, I'll be comparing it to the previous adaptation of the Stephen King novel that ran on TV in 1990. Now, I've never been a fan of the guy, but I was willing to give both adaptations a chance. And for anyone who hasn't seen the new It, major spoiler warning. It's pretty much the same thing as the first part of the miniseries, but if you care that much, then I suggest you save this video for later. And also, the new It is R. Well, of course I'm not going to show or say anything too intense, but viewer discretion is advised still. Okay, enough clowning around. Which It is better? The 2017 or 1990 version? Let's take a look. Wait, I kind of find the soundtracks a bit too, not boring, but unsuitable for the intro to a video. So I'm just gonna throw in some random music and hope it works.
His palm spaghetti, knees weak, arms spaghetti. There's vomit on his sweater spaghetti, mom spaghetti.
Starting off with the original, how scary is it really? Well, if you have an extreme fear of clowns or bicycles, then it's gonna be pretty terrifying to watch. If not, then sadly you're out of luck. Honestly, I'm not sure how anyone can actually find this movie scary. I mean, it's weird, but not much more than that. Like, seriously, how is this scary?
Mike Hanlon, if you see...
Excuse me, sir. Do you have Prince Albert in a can? You do? Well, you better let the poor guy out.
Help, Mike Hanlon!
Maybe back in the day, this could pass as horror, but the scares don't hold up well. The same goes for plenty of other horror movies from back in the day. Okay, so it's outdated. I guess that's why we have a remake. In my opinion, it's a pretty good idea, remaking the TV miniseries into a theatrical movie that can scare modern audiences. Only problem is, It 2017 isn't that scary either. I would definitely say that it's more unsettling and visually disturbing, but I wouldn't go as far as to call it scary. Don't get me wrong, there are a few good scares, but cut out a few jump scares and things that just look gross, and you're not left with that much. Easily the scene that had me on the edge of my seat the most was when the bullies are playing with a gun and were gonna shoot a cat. Literally, I feared for the cat's life more than the protagonists. I think the core problem for both films in terms of horror is that clowns just aren't scary. Yes, clowns make plenty of people uncomfortable and are disturbing, but simply having a freaky clown on screen as the base of all the scares isn't gonna cut it. A problem I have specifically with the remake is how dumb the characters get once they're in the thick of it. It pulls out all the horror movie cliches. Some kids are stupid enough to wander off on their own or to not follow the others. There's plenty of door slamming, people getting trapped, and yada yada. Characters in horror movies are idiots. So it's hard to feel sympathy for someone or care about what they're going through if they're only in a pickle because of their own stupidity. Overall though, if I were to choose one that's scarier, I'd definitely go with the 2017 version. At least there are some moments that are creepy, and in one or two scenes it does get pretty intense. And its Pennywise is a heck of a lot more disturbing, especially in the way it moves. It kind of vibrates towards you. And those teeth, ugh, oh man, that's weird. The miniseries, on the other hand, is more laughable when it tries to be scary. It feels very outdated, like something maybe only your grandparents or 5-year-olds would find scary. I can't recall one part in which I actually got scared or creeped out. So even though neither one of them are truly scary, the remake wins this round. But if you want to hear about some real scares, then go watch my Amnesia video from last week. Shameless plug over. Stephen King has a bad habit of writing a lot. I mean a lot. The It novel is exactly 1,138 pages long. In contrast, most books I've read are between 200 and 300 pages. Any longer than that, and it feels like a never-ending struggle to finally finish and move on with my life. On and off, I've been reading Atlas Shrugged. Oh goodness. So the basic premise to It is that every 27 years, Pennywise, the killer shape-shifting clown, goes around and wreaks havoc on the town of Derry, Maine. Many kids go missing, including the main character Billy's little brother George. Billy, as well as the other losers around the town, join together over the summer, fight bullies, and try to stop Pennywise from taking more kids. 27 years later, they hear about more disappearances and come back as adults to kill the clown once and for all. How do the adaptations deal with this massive amount of writing to cover? Well, the new It deals with this by cutting the story in half and only dealing with the first half about the characters as kids. So instead of struggling to adapt the entire thing in a 2 to 3 hour movie, it focuses in on this particular piece of it for 2 hours and 15 minutes. The other half of the King novel will get its own time in a sequel. Wouldn't it be cool if that sequel comes 27 years later, so it's like in actual time and the same actors are used but as middle-aged adults? I feel bad for the fans of the movie who are dying to see what they do with the other half, but they'll get over it. 27 years isn't that long. Star Wars fans waited 32 years for another real Star Wars movie. Anyways, how does this decision hold up? The answer is surprisingly well. We get to know more about the characters and what each of them went through as children. We see more of Beverly's harassment problems, Billy desperately trying to find his lost brother, and certainly more of Stan struggling to prepare for his bar mitzvah. There's even more about the bullies and a pretty cool scene where one of them gets picked off by Pennywise early on. Not that more always equals better, but what we're given here certainly helps us get into the minds of the characters as Pennywise psychologically torments each of them. The stuff between Bill and his brother George is probably my favorite part of the mind tricks. That was great. The one exception, I think, is the character Ben. He's kind of left out in the 2017 version, and is just the fat, new kid. The 90s one tells us a lot more about him, so for the most part, we get to see a more detailed and fleshed out story, as the film takes its time to adapt this half of the novel. It's not rushing in a 1.5 hour time span, like the original version. I just hope I can say the same thing when part 2 comes. There is one piece to the story of the remake that I really didn't like. It brings back the whole damsel in distress trope. Beverly gets kidnapped by Pennywise towards the end, and the rest of the kids have to save her. It's 2017, can we get over this? For the 90s adaptation, I'm counting both child and adult parts because they're both intertwined pieces of the collective whole. After I watched part 1 of it, I forgot there was a part 2. I walked away thinking, yeah, that was pretty good. Then a day or two later, it hit me that there's more to it. I was perfectly satisfied with just part 1, but after part 2, oh my god, please wipe my memory. The first part with the kids I thought was pretty good. Basically the same thing as the remake, with a couple of things switched around here and there. It actually kind of reminded me of The Sandlot, except with a killer clown instead of a cute doggy and Darth Vader. That's probably because of the tone. It has a lighter, warmer tone as the kids band together, fight bullies, and build dams, while the remake definitely feels more horror-y. I do like the sillier tone of the original film because, let's face it, killer clowns is already a silly concept, while the new one is slightly tone deaf. Like, 1 second it's all creepy, and the next it's goofy and funny, and then the next it's all serious. But again, I have to address part 2. It has the same tonal problem. Like, it's not consistent. 1 second they're eating and having fun together, and the next is a scare, the next they're reminiscing again, and then another scare. It's just all over the place. Like, part 2 sucks. It's awful. Half of it is just the characters remembering their childhoods in Derry, and some really cheesy scenes to go along with it. Guys? Hello? There's a clown on the loose. The clown's killing children. Guys, gotta do something about that. Guys? Okay then. The scene is way longer, but I figured I'd spare you. So, many times I'm thinking, can we just get back to the whole murderous clown thing? So, by a long shot, the remake presents the story better. Okay, so I'm not about to go in depth about all the characters, because there's 7 of them, and contrary to popular belief, I don't have that much free time. First off is Billy. He's sad about his brother George getting sent to the Great Sewer in the sky. Beverly, or Bev, gets abused by her father and made fun of for, well, acting too womanly. Before, her father just slapped her and yelled at her a lot. Beverly did have a habit of getting slapped by guys. But now it's somewhat implied that she's more sexually abused, though it's not implicitly said or shown. Ben, who's new to Derry, gets picked on for being fat. The new one pretty much leaves it at that, but the old version tells us more about how he has to live with his aunt because his dad died fighting in Korea. Eddie has a helicopter mom who falsely medicates him. Richie cracks all the jokes. Mike is new to the town in the miniseries, but in the new one, he's homeschooled and kills sheep for a living. He's the one who calls everyone back to Derry as adults. And finally, Stan is, well, the Jewish kid and the son of a rabbi. There, that's all of them. The 90s adaptation takes a younger, more innocent approach to the characters. Like I said before, the tone is warmer and more fun. They look younger, talk younger, and act younger. Like, seriously, who has fun dam building? It's like I'm watching Angry Beavers. The new version presents them as more adult. They look older, face more adult issues, and curse every other word. I can't tell if the movie is being smart or dumb here. Is it being smart by having the characters curse because they're trying to make up for their lack of maturity? Or is the movie being dumb because it itself is trying to make up for his lack of maturity? I can't really tell. Real mature people like me use words like Shrek and dung. As far as characters go, even though the 2017 It provided more detail and showed us their struggles a bit more in general, I'm gonna give it to the original. They have more personality and are more likable in my opinion. Especially Richie in the new one, all his jokes are just annoying your mom jokes and whatnot. He never actually came across as the comedian, but as the kid that everybody wants to shut up, and I just want to shove a brick down his throat. That's just one example, but for the most part, the same goes with the rest of them. I like them better in the original. I'm sure by now we're all familiar with Pennywise, the shape-shifting monster who takes the form of a clown, also called It. It preys upon the fears of children and eats them or keeps them spinning around to decorate its sewer with. Again, I don't find it that scary of a monster or serial killer depending how you look at it. A murderous clown sounds like a good idea for a horror in theory, but in execution it's nearly impossible to take seriously, even in the creepier new one. But I do like the whole psychological manipulation thing. I think it's really cool, showing each kid what they're most afraid of. Pennywise is like the neutered version of Scarecrow. At least in the remake, he doesn't turn into a giant spider monster that everyone kicks and beats to death. That was really dumb. Again, this version went darker and more serious. The new Pennywise looks and sounds way creepier, while the old one went with a simple traditional clown look and accent. Then there's also the bullies. They were probably the weakest part of the movie, and the part 1 of the series. The main bully is Henry, and he's followed around by his posse. Eventually, Pennywise contacts Henry to help him kill the kids, and it's such a stupid subplot. I was desperately hoping that this would get cut out of the remake, because the idea of these stereotypical bullies, who just love to pick on people, has been so overdone and is such an eye-roller every time I see it. Bullies in films tend to be written so one-dimensionally. Whenever I see a bully in a movie, the cringe is so real. Except maybe the plastics. Regina George was well done. I'm also confused, why doesn't Pennywise just kill them himself? Like, he's in close quarters with them all the time, but he just spends his time scaring them. He doesn't actually try to kill them most of the time. So, for the antagonists, I think I'll give it to the 1990 It. Simply because I really enjoyed Tim Curry's performance as Pennywise. It's just one of those unforgettable performances. When I look at the new one, overall I think he's acted okay, but Curry's take on it is certainly more memorable. There are certainly themes throughout both interpretations of It. Of course, they're mostly the same considering it's the same story, with the same characters, for the most part. Certainly the biggest theme in both Its is fear. Pennywise constantly attacks each of the characters through their own minds and torments them with their own fears. In the 1990 miniseries, Billy goes to a photo album of George and sees it start to bleed. In the 2017 one, Pennywise takes the form of a painting that creeps Stan out and attacks him with it. To take down the clown, the kids unite and help each other conquer their fears, because apparently through fear is the only way Pennywise can attack you, even though he literally rips Georgie's arm off without scaring him, but whatever. So by conquering their fears, they're able to stand up to it. And there's the theme of nostalgia in the old one. All the kids, except Stan, RIP, meet up back in Derry, recall their childhoods, and have fun together. Sadly, this is some of the most horrible stuff to come out of a TV screen, and I've seen Fuller House. Because the remake shows more of the fear that grips each character, with the exception of Ben, I think it handles fear a bit better, and it lacks all the pointless scenes of the characters reminiscing. And I don't think I have much left to say. Neither one was really scary, but the remake was very disturbing sometimes. There's a tonal switch in the new one that makes it darker and more serious. The miniseries had more likable characters with more personality to them. Tim Curry's performance was brilliantly silly. I'm happy with the decision to cut out the second half of the story, which was awful before, and the new teeth look cool. Honestly, I'd rather watch the first part of the miniseries than the theatrically released movie, but I just can't ignore part 2, and that really brings the whole thing down. I didn't love or hate either one of these adaptations of the novel. I thought they ranged from pretty good to okay. In the end, there's no arguing it. Even though I enjoyed part 1 more than the film, I can't just isolate part of a work and say, okay, that's all I'm gonna judge. If I did that, then I'd also have to call Rogue One the coolest Star Wars movie because the second half was so epic, despite the slow, uninteresting, and jumpy first half. Or say that Titanic is one of my favorite action movies because I find a disturbing amount of enjoyment once the ship starts sinking. No, I have to judge the whole thing. And that is why the winner is the 2017 version. They both have their positives and negatives, but overall, the remake is certainly the better adaptation of Stephen King's novel. Most importantly, it actually feels like a horror. The miniseries just felt like a comedy starring a possessed clown. Remember, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe. See you next week.